You weren't even supposed to be born, my sister yelled across the living room. My parents said nothing, so I handed her an envelope, and what was inside made her leave in tears. My name's Jake. I'm 26 years old, and apparently, I was never supposed to exist. The night this happened was my dad's birthday, his 60th. There were cake crumbs on the floor, half-empty bottles on the counter, and my older sister Emily, standing in front of the fireplace like she owned the place, because in her head, she did. It wasn't even about me. Not at first. We were all sitting around, having this fake little family celebration where everyone pretends we like each other. Emily was telling some story about her latest real estate deal, something about how she flipped a place in Asheville and made $200,000. She always has a story like that. Emily's life is a highlight reel, and we're all just the static in between. Then she turned to me. So what are you doing now, Jake? Still at that little tech job, or whatever? Still. That word she uses like a knife. I told her I was working at a startup. We just signed our first client, and we're building something we think could scale. She laughed. Not even fake polite, just loud and real. Right? Building. Like Legos. I wasn't going to take the bait. I just said, it's going well. But she kept going. That's her thing. She's not happy unless she gets blood. Mom, remember when Jake used to say he was going to be a famous programmer? What was it you said? He'll probably build a video game and retire by 30? She chuckled, like we were all in on the joke. I glanced at my mom. She didn't look up, just ran her thumb over a wine glass, quiet. And then it came out of nowhere, or maybe it had been sitting in her throat for years. You weren't even supposed to be born. Everyone froze. Even the background music on the TV felt like it got quieter. I turned to her. What did you say? She didn't flinch. I said you were a mistake. You knew that, right? There's a moment when something inside you stops. When your heartbeat doesn't skip, it holds. I looked at my parents, waiting for one of them to say something. Anything. Emily, that's enough. Or don't say that. Or just hey. But my dad was still staring blankly at the scrolling sports ticker on the TV. My mom. She exhaled slowly, like this wasn't news. Like she had heard it before. That's when the room started to feel small. Like the walls were listening. Like every shadow in the house had been waiting for this moment to finally speak. I stood up. Not to yell, not to storm out. I just didn't trust myself to sit still anymore. Emily rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. What? I mean, it's true. You're what happens when someone forgets to take their pill. You were never part of the plan. You just showed up. And that was it. The moment everything clicked. The missed birthdays. The smaller gifts. The hand-me-downs. The way my parents smiled just a little less when it came to me. She wasn't just being cruel. She was saying out loud what had always been underneath everything. Later that night, I sat in my childhood bedroom. Same peeling posters, same uneven blinds, same feeling like I was borrowing space in someone else's home. I pulled out an old photo album. The cover was dusty, but the inside looked new, because no one had touched it in years. Emily's section was bursting. Dance recitals. Soccer trophies. Senior prom with 3 different shots of her and her date. Mine. For photos. 1 from kindergarten. 1 from a school play where I wasn't even looking at the camera. 2 from birthdays where my name wasn't on the cake. That's when I decided. This wouldn't be another thing I swallowed. I wouldn't be the quiet background character in someone else's perfect story. If she wanted to throw punches, I'd let her. But the next time, I'd come prepared. Why didn't anyone stop her? Why didn't either of my parents say anything when Emily said I should have never been born? It wasn't a slip of the tongue. That kind of sentence doesn't just tumble out. You mean it, or you've heard it before. By morning, I was already in investigation mode. I know that sounds cold, but honestly, something shifted in me. Like the switch that keeps you hoping they'll change. Flipped off. Now I just wanted the truth. I started with my mom's closet. She always kept journals, spiral-bound, scribbled over, old school. I knew she'd gone to therapy off and on, mostly when Emily was in high school and started throwing tantrums about wanting to move out. That was the time I learned what the word manipulative really meant, and not from a dictionary. I dug through some boxes at the back of the walk-in closet and found a stack of old notebooks. Most were lists, grocery, chores, holiday plans. But one was different. Leather cover, slightly worn on the edges. Pages yellowed just enough to look personal. And inside, a storm. September 9th, 2000. Told Linda I'm pregnant again. She laughed. I didn't. I feel nothing. Just panic. September 15th, 2000. Can't believe I'm doing this again. Emily's almost 7. I'm too tired to raise another one. This wasn't supposed to happen. October 4th, 2000. Still can't connect with the baby. John says I should try to get excited. But all I feel is regret. January 23rd, 2001. Still angry at myself for not terminating. I just froze. I didn't act. I let it happen. Now I'm stuck. That last line hit like a truck. Not terminating. She thought about it. She wrote it down. Saved it. Reread it. Not, I was scared. Not, it was a tough time. She said she was angry that she didn't go through with it. I sat there on the floor of my childhood home, knees up against my chest, reading words my mother wrote about wishing I didn't exist. I don't know how long I stayed like that. When I finally got up, the air in the house felt heavier. Like now that I knew the truth, the walls weren't pretending anymore. And it wasn't just the journal. Once I opened my eyes, I started seeing everything for what it actually was. The living room shelf, Emily's high school awards, her graduation cap, her wedding photo, still up even after the divorce. No photos of me. Not one. I checked the kitchen calendar. Mom had circled Emily's birthday with little stars and hearts. Mine? Nothing. I opened the hallway drawer, the one full of old receipts and junk mail. There were medical bills still filed away, from the time Emily wanted cosmetic dental work to fix a crooked smile. Thousands of dollars. My dad's signature at the bottom. Meanwhile, I'd had a visible overbite for 4 years, and when I asked about braces, they said, "You don't need to impress anyone." I pulled everything. Journal entries, photos, scanned bills. I started compiling a digital file. No revenge plan. Not yet. But I wanted proof. If they were going to act like I was the crazy one, or that I was too sensitive, or taking things the wrong way, I wanted the facts lined up and waiting. I named the folder The Invisible Son, because that's what I was. Not abused, not hated outright. Just ghosted. Soft neglected. A long, quiet rejection stretched out over 2 decades. The worst part? I realized I spent most of my life trying to prove I was worthy of the spot I took up. I used to think, maybe if I graduated early, or got a great job, or bought them something nice, they'd see me. But now I was just watching the evidence pile up. And something cold inside me started to settle in place. This wasn't just a moment. This was the opening act. And if Emily thought she'd landed the final blow, she had no idea what I was building. You know how people always say forgive and move on? Yeah, that doesn't apply when you grow up in a house where you were treated like a piece of misplaced luggage. Unwanted, forgotten, and then mocked for asking why you weren't on the guest list. After reading my mom's journal and pulling all the evidence, I didn't feel broken. I felt awake. Like I'd spent years in a fog thinking maybe I was just being dramatic. Maybe I'd misunderstood everything. But no, I had been raised in a family where my existence was inconvenient, something to be tolerated, not embraced. And Emily? She was just the mouthpiece for the truth they were too cowardly to say aloud. Until now. I went back to my apartment that night with a mission. I opened my laptop and started organizing. This wasn't just emotional clutter. This was a record. A ledger of 26 years of being treated like background noise. I made folders. Photos, ones where I was cropped out, blurry, or standing alone at the edge while everyone else posed together. Documents, receipts, and bills showing how they paid thousands for Emily's braces, car, prom dresses. Mine, a $600 check for miscellaneous expenses after graduation. That was it. Messages, screenshots of texts, emails, anything that showed the way my parents spoke to me versus her. One email from my dad to my aunt said, "Emily's really going places. Jake's still figuring himself out, but he's a good kid." I was 24, with a degree, and a full-time job, still figuring himself out. Then I scanned the journal page, the one where my mom said she regretted not terminating her pregnancy. That became the cover. I printed everything, made it clean, professional, bound it in a simple black folder. No revenge fantasy, no dramatics, just the truth, delivered cold, and I placed it in a manila envelope. Across the front, I wrote one thing. In case you forgot. Now came the question, when? I didn't want to mail it. Too passive. I wanted it handed over in person, when she felt safe, smug, untouchable. So I waited. And as if the universe wanted to help me write the script, Emily texted me 4 days later. "Mom wants to do a family dinner Sunday. Be nice if you showed up for once." For once. That line made me laugh. I hadn't missed a single birthday dinner in 5 years. I was always the one showing up, smiling through the tension, chipping in for a gift no one thanked me for, helping clean up while Emily went outside to take selfies. But sure, for once. Perfect. Sunday came. The house smelled like lemon chicken and tension. My dad was on the grill. Mom was plating appetizers. Emily was already in full performance mode, wearing a white dress and pouring wine like she was hosting The Bachelorette, Narcissist Edition. I stayed quiet. Until dessert. That's when Emily looked at me and said, with her classic sugary poison tone, "You've been so quiet tonight, Jake. Everything okay? You look tired." I nodded. "I was just thinking about what you said last week." She blinked. What I said? About me not being supposed to be born. The table went still. Emily smirked, trying to play it off. "Come on. Don't be so sensitive. It was a joke." I pulled the envelope from under the table and slid it across to her. She looked confused at first, then amused. What is this, a letter? Open it. She pulled the folder out. Read the title page, then flipped through the contents. Her face shifted, slowly. First confusion, then stillness, then something in her eyes I'd never seen before, fear. She closed the folder and looked up at me. What is this? I leaned forward slightly. Calm. Steady. It's the truth. Since everyone here's been so allergic to it. My mom looked like she'd seen a ghost. My dad was staring at the tablecloth like it might catch fire. Emily clutched the folder to her chest like she could hide it from the others. She stood up suddenly. I'm not doing this, she said, voice sharp. This is manipulative. You're sick. I just said, no. I'm finally just done pretending. She stormed out without another word. Nobody followed her. That was the moment I knew. The person they all built their lives around just got knocked off her pedestal by the brother she said shouldn't exist. After Emily stormed out, slamming the front door so hard the hallway mirror rattled, no one moved for a long time. I stayed seated, my fingers resting on the table, my glass of water untouched. I didn't look at either of them, my parents. I wanted to see who'd speak first. But the silence had weight now. Like something died in the room, and everyone was too polite to acknowledge the smell. Finally, my mom shifted in her chair, cleared her throat. You didn't have to do that in front of everyone. Not, I'm sorry. Not, she was out of line. Just that. Like the issue was me making a scene. I looked at her, slow and deliberate. You wanted quiet, right? I gave you quiet for 26 years. How'd that work out for everyone? She looked away. My dad picked up a napkin and started folding it like it was some sacred task that required all his attention. I spoke again. Did either of you plan to say anything when she told me I should have been a miscarriage? Still no answer. It was worse than yelling. Worse than guilt. It was absence. Like they couldn't be bothered to pick a side. Even now, I stood up, walked over to the counter, picked up the cake knife and ran it under hot water. It still had bits of chocolate stuck to the blade. Probably from when Emily cut the first slice for herself. That was her tradition. Birthday or not, she took the first piece. You know, I said, drying the knife with a towel, I used to think I just wasn't trying hard enough. That if I were better, louder, more useful, maybe I'd matter more. I turned back to them. But I was never broken. I was just an interruption. Still, neither spoke. So I left. The ride home was quiet. But my mind wasn't. Memories kept surfacing, vivid ones. Moments I'd buried because they made the world feel tilted. Like when I was 11 and broke my wrist during gym class. I called my mom from the nurse's office. She said she couldn't leave work early because Emily had a piano recital. So I waited, in pain, until a neighbor picked me up. Or when I got accepted into a summer coding camp with a partial scholarship. I was so excited, I printed the acceptance email and left it on the kitchen counter. 2 days later, it was still there, untouched. I asked my dad if he saw it. He said, "That's great, bud," and then changed the subject to Emily's upcoming internship in DC. That night, I posted the photo of the manila envelope on a private forum I follow. Just the envelope. No context. No names. The caption read, "Sometimes, all it takes is paper and silence." Within hours, I had dozens of messages. Some said, "This was powerful." Others, "I've been there." And one that hit harder than the rest. "You were never invisible. Just surrounded by people who refused to see." The next morning, I got a message from my cousin Rachel. She was at the dinner too. "I saw what you gave Emily. I'm sorry. I never realized. It makes sense now." And then, "You weren't wrong. You were just finally visible." What surprised me was who didn't reach out. Emily never texted. Never called. Just blocked me on every platform. Mom didn't call. Neither did Dad. But you know who did? My old high school teacher, Mr. Paulson. He saw the post because it had gone semi-viral in a private support group. He messaged me. "You were one of the sharpest kids I taught. I always wondered why you seemed so quiet at parent events." That one almost got me. Because yeah, I was quiet. Not because I didn't want to speak, but because I knew no one was really listening. Later that week, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside, the envelope. My envelope. The folder untouched. Just a sticky note on the cover. "You win. Happy." No signature. But the handwriting was Emily's. And all I could think was, this wasn't about winning. This was about finally refusing to lose by default. You'd think after dropping a bomb like that, there'd be more fallout. Screaming. Apologies. Dramatic midnight texts. Maybe a voicemail or two begging to talk this through. But silence. That's what surprised me most. It turns out, when you finally confront people who built a world without you in it, they don't try to pull you back in. They just carry on. 3 days passed before anyone said a word. My phone finally buzzed. It wasn't from Emily. Not my parents. It was Aunt Karen. "Jake, I heard about the dinner. I don't know the full story, but I'm sorry. You never deserved that. I didn't respond at first. I just stared at her message, wondering how much she did know. I had always assumed the extended family saw Emily as the golden child, too. But maybe they just accepted what they were shown. Over the next week, a few cousins messaged. Some offered vague sympathy. One straight up said, "We all saw how your mom treated Emily like royalty. We just didn't know it was that bad for you." I told him thanks, but inside, I felt something bitter surface. They all noticed. They just didn't say anything. That weekend, I drove back to the house one final time. Not to talk, not to rehash, just to leave the spare key and pick up a few boxes of childhood junk I'd left in the attic. My mom was in the garden, pretending not to see me. I walked past her, unlocked the front door, moved fast. The attic was dusty, filled with old photo frames, holiday decorations, boxes labeled Emily, HS Memories, and one small one labeled Jake. Just Jake. Inside, a few crumpled report cards, a faded 5th grade art project. No baby book, no first day of school photos. I took the box anyway. As I was walking back down the stairs, I noticed something taped to the door of my old bedroom. An envelope, plain white, my name written in my father's handwriting. I opened it in the car. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No greeting, no sign-off, just one line. "We just didn't know how to love you." That was it. It hit harder than I expected. Not because it was touching, because it confirmed everything. He didn't say he loved me. He didn't say he was sorry. He just admitted that they never figured out how to. Like I was a puzzle they left unsolved. A plant they forgot to water. An email left in drafts and never sent. I moved into my new place the following week. Small studio apartment, city view, decent light, no ghosts. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. And for once, I felt like I could breathe. I took the envelope with the folder, the one I gave to Emily, and slid it into the back of my closet. Not as a trophy, not even as a memory, just a reminder of the line I crossed. The line between surviving your childhood and finally walking away from it. 2 months later, I got an email from an old friend of Emily's. Random. We hadn't talked in years. She wrote, "Hey, weird question. I know things blew up with your family, but I wanted to say, I always thought you were the most grounded one. Emily made it sound like you were some bitter loser, but I guess now I know why. Anyway, I hope you're okay." That made me smile. Not because she believed me, because someone else saw it too. Saw the act, the lies, the spin Emily was always so good at selling. And speaking of Emily, she was unraveling. A friend of a friend told me she'd moved back in with our parents. Apparently, her business had hit some kind of wall. A deal fell through. Some contractor sued. The details were messy. But what stood out? "She's not the same," the mutual friend said. "She seems scared, like she's waiting for the next thing to fall apart." I didn't gloat. I didn't message her. Didn't post about it. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about peace. I did write something, though. Not for her. For myself. A letter I folded and tucked into the same folder I once handed her across the table. It read, "You weren't the mistake. You were the truth they never wanted to face. And now, they can't look away." 6 months. That's how long it's been since I left the house where I was raised. The house where birthdays were optional for me. Where the silence from my parents was louder than any slap. Where being invisible was just the role I had to play. But now, I'm not invisible. I'm not the mistake. I'm something else entirely, free. I'd be lying if I said I didn't check in, digitally, at least. You don't cut off a family like mine without occasionally wondering what they're up to. Emily's social media is quieter now. No more gloating posts about business wins or spa weekends. Her last photo was from a cheap-looking cafe, captioned "Starting Fresh." The comments were telling. "What happened to that penthouse listing? Didn't you have a new fiancé? DM me, girl. You okay?" No replies. I don't know exactly what caused her world to crumble. But something tells me when you spend your life stepping on people, eventually someone moves out of the way, and you fall. As for my parents, I haven't spoken to them since the key drop. But they did send a card. A generic and signed Christmas card in an envelope with my name misspelled. Inside, the only thing written was, "Hope you're doing well." No return address. No note. Just that half-hearted olive branch tossed like a coin into a fountain. I didn't respond. I burned it in my kitchen sink. I've started therapy. Real therapy. Not journaling into the void or venting into private forums. And I'll tell you something my therapist said that I think about every day. You didn't need their permission to exist. You just needed to stop asking for it. That line, that's what cracked everything open. Because for years, I was fighting to earn something I never owed them. Proof that I belonged. But belonging doesn't come from begging. Sometimes it comes from walking away and closing the door behind you. I've been building something, too. That startup I mentioned? We just signed a second investor. We're not huge, but we're growing. And for the first time in my life, I'm creating something that doesn't come with Emily's name stitched into it. No family handouts. No hand-me-down expectations. Just me and what I choose to build. I bought myself a watch. Simple. Black leather. Clean silver face. It's not expensive, but it's the first nice thing I've ever bought without thinking about whether someone else would approve. It reminds me, time is mine now. One last thing. You remember that folder I gave to Emily? The one that made her leave in tears? I left something out of that folder. The receipts, the photos, the journal page, all real. But the timeline of forgotten birthdays? The year-by-year breakdown of spending? The graph comparing attention given to Emily versus me? Fabricated. Designed. Staged. Because I knew if she flipped through page after page of brutal math, she wouldn't question the deeper truth. She'd feel it. And she did. It wasn't about exposing them. It was about holding up a mirror, one she couldn't look away from. I posted one last update in the private forum that had helped me get through it all. It said, "My sister told me I was never supposed to be born. My parents said nothing. So I gave them all something they couldn't ignore, a record of the life they didn't want to acknowledge. Now I sleep better. And I smile more. I wasn't the mistake. I was the one who saw the cracks in the portrait and walked away before it crumbled." The replies were overwhelming. People shared their own stories, their own dinners, their own envelopes. And that's when I knew this wasn't just my story. It was a story for anyone who's ever been the afterthought. Now, I wake up and make coffee without wondering if I'm enough. I don't wait for a phone call on my birthday. I don't expect anyone to say we were wrong. Because the truth is, they were. And I don't need them to admit it for me to believe it. I'm not rebuilding a bridge. I'm building something else entirely. A life. Mine. Unapologetically. And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day, and trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one.